Hello guys, this is your Uncle Big Fish, and just want to say hello to you guys. I've been feeling kind of down a lot lately, so here goes nothing, alright? The goal of this video is to give a good significant idea to Pearl Abyss on how class balancing has been like for the past, 2 years. This is going to be quite a long one, so buckle up, and I will do some announcements at the end of the video. To start, I just wanted to say this first, that I do believe that this Black Desert Mobile carries so much potential, and it had truly been one of the greatest work of art for the MMORPG genre. Even years later, no other game, in my opinion, has the capability to rival its detail and mechanics. Every movement and gameplay is so immersive and so fluid that other games just can't seem to replicate what they're trying to do. With all this in mind, how did this amazing game, slowly collapse? See, that's difficult to believe, right? How could a game like this collapse? Well, the key is not on one issue, but actually a few. However, since that is a bit too much to fit into one video, and most of it is not really according to my channel's ideals, we will not really be talking about it. And instead, we're just going to be talking about one particular thing: the class balance. Probably the most important one out of them all. So let's start. What is class balancing? Well, class balancing is a game developer's action towards making a weaker class capable of competing and making stronger classes weaker, to remove as much tactical advantage a single class got over other classes. Why is class balancing necessary? See, now this is a question that a lot of people have been asking. Class balancing is absolutely necessary because it allows for a more diverse choice of options. This allows any player to choose what playstyle suits them the best, and without the fear of a class's mediocrity or strength to affect them in combat. So, what does bad class balancing cause? A bad class balancing causes an environment to be so doctrined into using only a few classes, rendering the majority of the other classes pretty much useless. As imbalance goes in real life, imbalance in the game works the same way. When there's something that can be abused, something that has so much power that it pretty much invalidates any other of its kind, people will abuse it. Why? Because the choices are very limited. You either use a class that you like and suffer, or use whatever's broken and excel. This is something that Pearl Abyss development team doesn't seem to understand for a long time. Bad class balancing might force a mass class change, and as nice as it is on paper as a source of revenue, it's the same concept you see on the children's storybook about the greedy farmer and the golden goose. A high flux of revenue in expense of the player's retention. As much as they want to believe that a broken class are good for the game, eventually people will get sick of being forced to play something they don't like just to stay relevant. And not only that, this actually also causes a more toxic player environment, and most importantly, delusion amongst players that are more affected by the change. Usually players who couldn't excel using their previous classes suddenly feeling like they are the best players, the extremely most talented players the moment they use a class that's broken. This one pretty much invalidates the ideal principle of BDM that has been the core build and foundation of the game itself. The belief that skill and CP is the two strongest weapons in the game. So now let's talk about a pattern that we can see throughout the BDM history. Okay, this will pretty much just gonna be focusing on the most important ones, some marks, some benchmarks. Let's start. On 2020, the Archmage was buffed to have a near perfect rotation of Invincible, pretty much allowing it to ignore the fundamental power difference of CP. And also at the time, there was not really any class that can do anything to it because it was just simply too strong for the era. At the time, there were so little things that other classes could do to it, and so because of that, people pretty much spammed the class. Everyone was playing Archmage, and it was just insane. It was so broken to the point where it couldn't seem to take damage no matter what you did to it. In 2021, Corsair was released, and it was probably the first class introduced into the game with a full immunity rotation in the arenas. It was a class with pretty much no counters, as it could rotate immunities over immunities indefinitely. It's got two anti-grab and 2 forward guard break. So it just had all the kits to kill almost any class. Its trading power was also exceedingly high. So it was just a class, it has no counters. And at the time, there was not really anything that can deal with it. Aside from one class, there was, at the time, only one class capable of dealing with it, and it was the Berserker. It was the class that was buffed at the same time with the release of the Corsair. The Berserker was the first class that received what we call the second generation rework. And man, that class surely had its time. It was so strong that a single Reckoning at the time could chop any class's head clean off in one shot. It was that strong. For the newer players, yes, there was such a time in BDM when there was a class that was just so strong, one skill would chop your head clean off. It was insane. It was actually so fucked up. And boy, it was abused so bad. Out of a whole screen of players that you see in your screen, I can give you my word, during those times, about 90 to 100% of the classes were Zerks, because probably even you're playing Zerk, although I wasn't, but I was very, very sure that I think a whole screen was just fully Zerks, because it was just so strong. There were just no other classes. There was just almost no other classes that could rival the strength that this Berserker had during its time. And so everyone went to play with Berserker, and that's pretty much when the Berserker era started. A couple months later, the Berserker and Corsair was nerfed, and BDM had finally enjoyed a few months of peace. During this era, it was pretty much fun. BDM was fun. During this era, every class was pretty much balanced out. There was not really a class that was too strong. Every class had their place in the game. And then what happens after, not long later, just a couple months later actually, was the time when the other second generation reworks arrived to global, bringing us 3 more cancer into the game: Titan, Raven, and Destroyer. Out of these 3 classes, 2 of them stood out as truly probably the strongest, and they were abused so bad. How bad were they abused? It was so bad that you probably only see 2 classes in Karkia. And this was actually a time when Karkia was still an event. It wasn't a monthly thing. It was actually an event that only happened once in a while. So you must really be sure to understand that, yes, for the duration of this event, you will only see 2 classes, because there is literally only 2 classes that can compete against them, and it's probably just each other. Titan could pretty much kill you with a single grab opening, and at the time, his failed grab actually contains immunity. So you can literally just grab someone, and even though it fails, it doesn't matter, because you have immunity while you're just hitting air because your grab failed. That failed immunity actually has immunity. So it was literally like a 0 risk thing where you can just rinse and repeat until the enemy dies. Moreover, he was so tanky during the era that nothing could even dent the layer of fucking fat covering that big body of his. It was just messed up. But out of the 3 of those new 2nd generation rework classes, one stood out a lot more than the rest. And this was the era of the Destroyer. This is arguably the single most cancerous class ever designed. It's like the Archmage. It had a near permanent invincible state, making it just completely impervious to damage and CC. This era lasted so long that almost a whole year after actually stood by. So what happened was this rework was done somewhere around August, and it goes all the way until February the next year. The next year, but before this, I just want to talk about the Raven a little bit. So the Raven was just as strong as these 2, bolstering almost a perma invincible state. It's got really high range and mobility, but unlike the Titan and the Destroyer, which needed pretty much no win condition, this class managed to hide in the shadows for so long. In 2022, after half a year of Destroyers and Titans fully dominating in every single PvP content, they finally got a nerf. But at its wake, a new class and a previously hidden shadow took its place. The new class Legatus and the previously forgotten Broken Raven came out in the spotlight. The Legatus was so strong. It was a ranged class without the weaknesses of a ranged class. It deals so much damage, its mobility is second to none, it's got so much invincible, it's got permanent immunity in arenas, and most importantly, its passive allows it to shrug off debuffs, which makes it impossible to slow, and you can't really do anything to it. It was the perfect whale class. It was literally a class without weakness, and it was just really broken class. This caused pretty much a repetition of the previous era of Destroyers, shifting to pretty much the Legatus era. And this actually got into a second faction of Legatus and Ravens. These are pretty much the only 2 classes that will just duke it out, because there's just no other class that can compete. This reign kept going for such a long time until finally Legatus and Raven was finally nerfed. And Legatus was killed to the point where it was not even half as good as it once was. The Raven, however, didn't really get major issues, once again escaping the gallows of Pearl Abyss development team. Until the early days of May, when finally a new class hit the attention of players, the BDO fan favorite Awakened Striker, or the Yacha. And this is pretty much where everything falls down to shit. This is once again the same case of every broken god class. It's a tanky, melee class with arguably the single highest damage output in the game. And it's not just tanky, but it also has the reach and range that puts even ranged classes to shame. Its immunity was so through the roof, enabling it to just spam skills without the ever fear of being punished. And its grab was so busted to the point where you can clean shot take out 60 to 75% of an enemy's HP in one grab opening. Not to mention, his super low grab cooldowns, speed, and mobility in field is second to none. It was truly a wrecking ball with the speed of a jet fighter. Well, as expected, it busted through the Korea server's official BDM arena tournament like butter. Like it was just too strong, and it didn't lose a single fight. It was just so messed up that it didn't lose a single match, even against another broken class. I can argue that the only defeat that it's got is probably the mistake of the pilot. After all, it was against a Lotus, which is also a broken class, but at the end of the day, the Yacha ended up destroying the Lotus as well, claiming as the winner of the Korea server arena tournament. This is actually so messed up, and everyone can see it. It was clear as day. The class was messed up. But Pearl Abyss, as usual, couldn't admit that what they had created is just simply a monster without weakness, and it was a very unfair class. But what we asked came by not long later. The class did get a nerf, not a big one, but, well, I guess that's just how it is. And ever since that day, Pearl Abyss has only been buffing classes like nuts, for example, the Grandmaster, and then recently they added the new buff to, of course, the Raven, which is already a fucking broken class, now making it even more broken and more busted than how it was once. You see, this is quite funny to me, how PA kept on stepping on the same hole over and over again, making the same mistakes over the same mistakes. And this is where we are today, 6 months later from Yacha's release, where Pearl Abyss just keep on releasing broken classes over and over again like Dracania, and do big mistakes after big mistakes on every single class balancing. Killing classes they just kill classes that they don't like. They don't really give adequate buffs to classes that needed it. Over buffing some classes to god levels. And well, that's just how it is. But this is a lesson. This video is not just a story. It is a lesson that at times, perhaps it is a good idea to listen. It is often a good idea to start listening to other people. To start to ask for help when you feel the need to. For so long, I have offered my help to Pearl Abyss as a consultant for their class balancing development. Because I do believe that with my expertise in classes and PvP, I can give a very unbiased idea of how a balanced class would look like. I pretty much understand almost every class's in and out, and I'm pretty sure I can give a very unbiased reaction and ideas for the Pearl Abyss team to balance classes. However, they do claim that they got their own team and agendas, while we watch the game slowly dies because of it. This class balancing issue is the reason why tournament that we are holding needed a class bans, cause the game developers just can't balance the classes properly, and they're too prideful to ask for help. True balance is something that I believe will never be achieved, as BDM is an MMO with over 38 classes. I think currently we have 39 classes, with so many diverse content. It's impossible to get every single class balanced out on every single content. However, getting close to what balance is, just getting close, is something very, very achievable, which I do believe that I can help with. I definitely think that being close to balance is very possible, and I would be very happy to help. So for Pearl Abyss, if you ever need the feel, if you ever have the feel that my help is necessary, you know where to find me. Everyone told me to give up, right? Even my boys and my members from Coral Reef. Uncle Big Fish, just give up. They won't listen to you. Whatever you say will not make a difference. But after I see so many of you, so many of my children just still full of fire and passion, seeing you guys practice day and night, I keep seeing you guys in normal arenas, you guys still grinding, I can't give up yet. Because if I don't fight for you, who will? Right? I'm the only one you guys got left. That's it for today's video. Announcement: the next video will be a multi-episode series of me breaking down how class balancing could have been done properly with the simplest changes. Hope you guys look forward to that series later on, and I'll see you guys again on the next one.